what role does the international support play in shaping Israel's strategy? You've mentioned the US, and you spoke about how they could be dragged into the conflict or get Iran back and have an upper hand in the negotiation process. But what about Iran? Are we also talking about them garnering or getting other international parties on their side? Do you think the international community will work hard on maybe favoring one side over the other, or will they be able to mediate and try to find a diplomatic and peaceful solution for this?
I think when we speak of the international community in this context, we speak of the powers and the actors that have the ability to be effective or to have an effect on this crisis and on the Iranian file. And that leaves us with a very few countries that is way narrower than the scope of the entire international community. And that is Russia, China, and a number of European powers, namely France, the United Kingdom, and Germany. And what I love, Hani, is that about these days, we're living in these rather exceptional days, historical days, by all means. This is that every international crisis that has been taking place over the past 5 years has exposed the irrelevance and ineffectiveness of the Europeans. The Europeans were supposed to be a moderating factor in this calculus. They were even trying to play a more constructive, positive role in Gaza as of late. However, when this war began, we were surprised that most of the major European powers, and namely the United Kingdom and France, which was a key mediator between the United States and Iran historically, they have completely jumped on the Israeli bandwagon and are openly providing Israel with unconditional support. The French president went as far as to pledge that he will defend Israel, that if France will defend Israel if it has to. Britain is already sending military assets to the region, and if the United States intervenes in the war, probably Britain will intervene too. Their aircraft carrier HMS Prince of Wales is sailing in the waters of the Middle East as we speak. And of course, the Germans are making the most pro-Israeli, pro-Zionist statements they can ever make. So unfortunately, the European stance is shameful and deconstructive. If anything, they are far from fair. They fail to recognize that Iran has been subjected to an act of aggression by the Israelis. And you know, Hani, that I'm not a big fan of Iran, but we call a spade a spade. Iran is a victim of a war of aggression and is even entitled to defend itself in this context. On the other hand, the Russians and the Chinese, who are supposed to be the allies of the Iranians, well, you have to revisit the definition of an ally before we delve more into that, because definitely there was no standing alliance between them. These countries do have a lot of common interests. Their interests align. They do support each other in certain ways. However, it is not an official alliance. And this is what is being proven on the ground. The Chinese and the Russians, their stances go nothing beyond condemning Israel, which is, of course, it is something that is commendable that they are condemning Israel very harshly in the UN and publicly. And also they have offered to mediate. There have been some reports that Russia and China might be supplying Iran with weapons, but that's normal. But we have not reported anything that is out of the ordinary in this regards that would pivot or push the balance of power or tip the balance of power in the favor of Iran. So if anything, they are not moving, they are not doing much to save the Iranians in this predicament. And it doesn't seem that they will be willing, the Russians and the Chinese, even though they could, to take any strong or harsh steps or measures against the United States to try to restrain it from escalating this war further against Iran, because basically those countries will not gamble into getting entangled into a direct confrontation with the United States over Iran. They would rather get into that confrontation over their respective spheres of interests, and that is, of course, the South China Sea and Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe in the case of Russia and the Northern Sea. So it doesn't seem that the international community will be doing much. And unfortunately, what's transpiring before us right now is the United States attempting to enforce its will by force, by the force of arms. The United States and Israel share a vision for a new Middle East. This new Middle East, since the 7th of October, has included attempting to liquidate the Palestinian cause, destroying Hezbollah in Lebanon and other Iranian proxies around the region, toppling the regime of President Bashar al-Assad, containing the Houthis in Yemen, and now it's about destroying Iran and degrading it, either destroying toppling the regime, or at least marginalizing Iran to become a second-tier power, not being able to exercise any significant influence as a regional power anymore. And this power play by the United States and Israel is unfortunately unopposed by any significant actor in the international community. And other Middle Eastern countries, they try, but they are unable to resist this huge tide.